This week on the food programme, we're going full-on festive and asking one big question. What is it that makes Christmas dinner Christmas dinner? I'm Dr. Annie Gray, a food historian and self-proclaimed Scrooge when it comes to the so-called traditional Christmas dinner. I've studied it, cooked it in historic costumes in various stately piles, and I've even written a book about it. But here's the thing. I can't bring myself to actually eat that classic meal of turkey and all the trimmings. I find it too big and too stressful. I also really don't like turkey, and I especially don't like the way it's eclipsed a much wider range of choices from the past. So, over the last decade, my own dinners on the big day have been somewhat different. I've feasted on mutton with caper sauce, or salmon, or veal, or lasagna, even a series of delicious sourdough pizzas. Yes, pizza on Christmas Day, it can be done. In this programme, I will be exploring Christmases past, present and future to consider some different and delicious Christmas dinners. By the end, I hope I'll have a really killer answer to the question of what my alternative, but still Christmassy, Christmas dinner will be. Maybe it might spark some ideas for you too, even the turkey faithful. I'm walking through Bath. The Christmas market is on. There are sheds selling mulled wine and Christmas decorations, all sorts of things, and flashing lights everywhere. It's wonderfully busy. It's just stopped raining, but there is certainly a really brilliant festive atmosphere in the air. I'm off to meet one of my oldest friends, Chris Bailey. Now, I have known Chris for about 20 years. We first met working in costume at Hampton Court Palace. He played Francis Bryan, who was one of Henry VIII's best mates, known as the Vicar of Hell. Since then, we've been in character in, oh my goodness, too many eras to mention, often arguing about historical things, but also, it has to be said, repeatedly arguing about Christmas dinner.
Have a mulled wine, please.
And could I also get a mulled wine, please?
There you are.
Thank you.
Cheers, guys. Warm hands, warm heart. Isn't that what they say?
Cold soul. Talk me through your Christmas dinner. Go on.
I love turkey with pigs in blankets, obviously. Roast potatoes, because they're a must. And actually, they're done according to the Gospel of St. Nigella.
Right.
Come on. Nigella's roasties. Roast carrots, roast parsnips, and peas. Oh, and the Brussels sprouts, and I've gone down the chestnuts and pancetta.
So we have already managed
those.
to get to 5 different sides on this one.
Yeah, it's
Tell
a
me you
blowout.
have help. Are you doing all of this on your own?
I do all the prep on Christmas Eve,
Right.
including tenting the turkey, which means all I have to do first thing Christmas morning is bung the oven on, and everything else is ready to go, so I can have as stress-free a Christmas day as possible.
As long as you've got Christmas Eve off to do it.
I always make sure I have. I almost expect you to go, bah, humbug.
I think I just want to explore other options, and I'm curious as to why people cook it, and I know a lot of people genuinely do enjoy it and love it and would be listening to this going, oh my goodness me, she's so horrible, she's ruining my Christmas, da 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 da. But I am curious as to whether people do it out of a sense of belonging, or a sense of necessity, or a sense of pressure, or genuinely because they absolutely love it and it's a key part of their year.
It's a comfort thing. I mean, I'm not saying that the Christmas traditions that I celebrate have been absolutely set in aspic, because that's not the case. So, for example, this is going to sound really weird. Breakfast on Christmas Day was always, when I was a kid, pork pie and bread and butter. And that was my dad's thing. And actually for years afterwards, I stuck with that. Then John and I got together, and their family tradition was to have a full English, which sounds insane. But I've adopted that tradition because that's important to him. And I like that melding of just introducing little bits over time. Yes, the turkey's the centerpiece, but you adapt and you create your own traditions. It's a comfort thing. I mean, heaven knows the way the world is at the moment, we all need those anchor points. And I actually genuinely like the taste of turkey. It's not a question of I'm doing turkey because I feel I have to do it. I really like the flavour.
Do you eat eat it when it's not Christmas?
No.
So, if you really liked turkey, wouldn't you eat it more than once a year?
Well, it's less available at other times of year. And also, well, the only time you see it outside of Christmas, it's there in a polystyrene or cardboard pack covered in cellophane, and you kind of don't know where it's been.
Yeah, no, I would agree with that one. I suppose in some ways my objection is this idea that what we've done is we've taken a very large meal, the Victorian Christmas meal, for example, which of course if you were aristocratic would be 3 different types of meat, 2 different roasts, endless amounts of dishes, and we've kind of boiled it down to a centrepiece, a few side dishes, and that turkey, I think the reason my vitriol is particularly aimed at turkey is because turkey was a part of the Christmas meal. It was a prestige bird, it was eaten, never ever the main dish until really the 1950s, because apart from anything else, ovens weren't big enough. The minute you know this, you open a 1960s oven, we've worked in houses with them, you open a 1960s oven, you can barely get a chicken leg in it, let alone an actual chicken, and definitely not a turkey. So to me, it's this kind of, it's symbolic of the sweep of everything American into the country. It's a sweep of, oh look, it's Thanksgiving turkeys, let's take something turkey's just so wrong in terms of the main centrepiece of a British Christmas.
Now, see, I love it though, because I always get a turkey that's much bigger than we need for those of us who are sitting down to Christmas dinner.
Leftovers are even worse.
Well, I mean, see, part of my joy is, for me, again, it's this tradition thing, Boxing Day morning, dismembering the turkey carcass, sticking all the meat in tubs to go in the fridge or the freezer, and then rendering the bones down for stock and making a really decently flavoured turkey stock that I can then use in maybe a risotto or something. I love that leftover side of it.
The national love affair with turkey, so the story goes, began with a Yorkshireman called William Strickland, who brought the birds back from the Americas in the 1520s. Now, there is no real evidence for this. Turkeys were traded into England via Europe and Turkey, hence the name, and while Strickland proudly stuck a turkey on his coat of arms in the 1550s, it was probably more to do with their reputation as fearsome fighters than anything else. But they were big, impressive feast birds, tastier than peacock and easier to farm than swan. No wonder they became popular. Turkey farming soon took off, especially in East Anglia, with turkeys driven on foot to markets in London where they were slaughtered fresh. In 1724, Daniel Defoe watched in awe as hundreds of turkeys crossed Stratford Bridge on the River Stour, calculating that in one season crossings numbered around 150,000 birds in total, and that was just one small bridge. Unsurprisingly, their feet suffered, so some farmers tried shoeing them with leather. It didn't catch on. Turkey truly became part of our Christmas tradition under the Victorians. Mrs. Beeton wrote in 1861 that
a Christmas dinner with the middle classes of the empire would scarcely be a Christmas dinner without its turkey, and we can hardly imagine an object of greater envy than is presented by a respected, portly paterfamilias carving his own turkey, and carving it well.
But look around Regency, Bath, and you'll see signs of what Christmas feasting would have been like in an era before Beeton, and of course before Charles Dickens. Not a favourite of mine, but he does write good food. He infamously placed a middle-class turkey on the poverty-stricken table of the Cratchits in his heavily idolised and wildly popular Christmas Carol.
Hello!
Hello!
How are you doing?
We're standing now in the dining room at number 1 Royal Crescent, which is set for a Christmas feast. So on the table in front of me, I've got all sorts of things, from a very festive pineapple through to lots of jellies as well. And I'm here with Amy Frost, who's the senior curator here for Bath Preservation Trust. Amy, set the scene for me. Tell me what I'm seeing and tell me what a Regency Christmas would have been like.
So we've got the table laid out for a lavish meal in Bath. We've got beef, plum pudding, we've got jellies, we've got desserts, and those are all made from using the moulds from our historic collections. We have all these ideas of very, very lavish entertainments at Christmas, which, if they could afford to live in a house like this at the time, they would have been able to afford the very best that was available in Bath. But I think we also have to kind of think about Bath at that time as well. So a lot of people have gone home to their country estates for Christmas. So the city has people that either are living here permanently or people for whom at Christmas time it's a cheaper time for them to come and kind of have the veil of fashionability of being in Bath. So you would have had dinners both with family and with friends, to particularly friends or people in the city that you're inviting to try and impress. But it would have been a lot more sort of low-key than perhaps what we imagine or what we think about.
I do note that this is a refreshingly turkey-free table. Now, I am aware that turkey was eaten. We do know that turkey was brought down to London from Norfolk on stagecoaches at this point. But from what I can see here, it was certainly not obligatory.
Well, we certainly don't have any historic evidence or records of turkey being in this house.
So a well-off Georgian Christmas wasn't focused around turkey. Instead, the major meat was beef, accompanied always by plum pudding, which we'd know today as Christmas pudding. They'd be accompanied by shred pies, better known as mince pies. So, down in the kitchen at No. 1 Royal Crescent, they let me roll up my sleeves. In front of me, I've got a table with all sorts of bits and pieces on, so I've brought everything I need for making mince pies. Here I've got my pastry, 2 pieces thereof, just a short crust pastry. I've got 2 mince pie tins, my flour shaker, my cutters, and my rolling pin. So I'm going to start rolling my pastry. So let's just cut out some circles. And I think to start off with, I'm going to use very, very Georgian mincemeat, one with meat in. I've had lots and lots of different meaty mincemeats throughout the years. What you find is the meat quantity dwindles as you go through time. So if you cook yourself a Tudor mincemeat, you're going to end up with a lot of meat, about 1/3 meat. And by the time you get to Jane Austen's era, you're normally only looking at a little bit of meat. So we'll pop those in and give them all a lid. If you think about it, there is still meat in mince pies in the form of the suet. Now, I acknowledge that if you're buying your mincemeat from a supermarket, it probably has vegetarian suet in, and you can, of course, replace the suet with butter if you feel that way inclined. But technically, all of that suet is beef suet, so there's still a little reminder of the past whenever we eat a modern mince pie. Enticed by the wafting smell of meaty mince pies baking in the oven, curators Amy Frost and Izzy Wall from the museum suddenly appeared in the kitchen. So I think they're done. They certainly smell done. And I can actually hear a sizzle coming out the oven. So... oh. Okay, these are the meaty ones. So you two were avowed mince pie haters. What do you think now?
Really tasty, and I'm a really fussy eater as well. There was a slight terror. It's like, I've got to try something, but you have converted me. This is really, really tasty.
It's just completely different to what we're kind of used to on that kind of Christmas mass market kind of mince pie, isn't it? Like, which is why I've not really liked them. But this is really good. Yeah, it does taste sweet, but you can taste the meat. And it's got that like sweet edge to it because of the fruit.
I always think the best way to describe it is as if you're eating a really, really lovely piece of roast meat with chutney. But that idea of sweet and savoury that we have today, very, very demarcated, is not quite such a thing at this point in time. I definitely have to take some form of inspiration from the past for my alternative Christmas dinner. That much is clear, both because of what I do professionally, but also because very, very clearly based on you two, the flavours of the past are very relevant today. So I'm going to have to think about how I incorporate, I think, historic flavours into my Christmas dinner. While Georgian high society in Bath was able to celebrate Christmas freely, the same was not true north of the border for quite some time.
I'm Dr. Lindsay Middleton, and I am a food historian based at the University of Glasgow.
And I'm Peter Gilchrist. I'm a food historian based in my tenement kitchen.
Together, Lindsay and Peter present the Scottish Food History podcast. And when it comes to Christmas feasts in Scotland, there is plenty to talk about. After all, Christmas celebrations were outlawed for more than 4 centuries after concerns from the church. Fun fact, Christmas Day in Scotland only became a public holiday in 1958.
I think this is one of the initial things that a lot of people don't know about Scotland, is that Christmas was banned for the longest time.
It was 1640 that Yule vacations were made illegal. And what that means in practice is that you could be, and people were, arrested for making Yule bread, for singing carols, the observance of Yule or Christmas in any way was made illegal in Scotland.
So this was much more serious than the English version of banning Christmas, which was more about saying Christmas needed to be the normal religious day. And it was quite... Cromwell kind of was a bit wavery on the whole topic. Yours was a proper, full-on, no joy.
People used to be sort of brought into the church, hauled before courts. Bakers were banned from baking certain things, so there was no mince pies to be had. It was a sort of hard no.
But actually, during that time, that's where we begin to see a relationship with Hogmanay building. And I think, but part of the reason that it became Hogmanay, part of the reason why I think Scotland people do it very well, is because it was the replacement for this other big feast. Regardless of what you call it around the world, people need a midwinter joy and light and gathering and food moment when everything is at its absolute worst.
And it's interesting because the sort of traditions that Peter was talking about, things like first footing, where you would, the first person to cross your path, it was traditionally on Christmas. It was a Yule tradition. These all just got shoved down. Our answer to not being denied a party was to just decide we're going to have it on...
we're going to have another party.
Another bigger, better party.
And just to explain first footing, that's when the first person to cross your threshold on what was Christmas and then became Hogmanay is the person who brings you luck.
Yeah, it's sort of meant to kind of forecast things about the year to come. And there were all these superstitions. And this is not just a Scottish thing. You see it in Irish folklore as well, and some parts of Northern England. But there was all these different sort of superstitions around who your ideal first footer was.
So Colin Firth as Mr. Darcy with a wet shirt on would be many people of a certain age's ideal.
But they also had to bring with them a bottle of something alcoholic, more often than not whiskey, and they had to bring something to eat, which could be a black bun, and then they had to have coal for your fire as well to keep you warm.
And you mentioned the food, and obviously that's what we're talking about. And the Scottish Christmas now, Hogmanay for a long time, does have certain foods associated with it. So cleety dumpling, you mentioned black bun. I'm presuming that those were beginning to be Christmas foods up to this abrupt stop of Christmas.
I mean, I think when you're thinking about food that's made at this time of year, there's not a great deal of difference in the ingredients because we don't have fresh fruit berries in December. We're dealing with dried fruits, we're dealing with spices, much of the same that we have down south in England. But we do have our own special approach to bakery in Scotland. So things like the black bun, which is essentially a really densely fruited, spiced cake, which is then wrapped in pastry.
Lindsay, you've made a study of 19th century cookery books. Do you see what we see elsewhere in the country, this kind of homogenisation of Hogmanay foods, Christmas foods, through the pages of cookery books?
Yeah, absolutely. And actually it's interesting to look at this sort of specifically Scottish cookbooks because there isn't a huge amount around Christmas in them as compared to, say, Beaton in the Victorian period, What you do see is things like Christmas goose. There's really lovely recipes in the sort of 1820s for goose for Christmas rather than turkey. And I think it's interesting that the kind of middle class Christmas in Scotland was more closely tied to your Dickensian English Christmas. You might have a turkey, you were thinking about that big roast bird, but actually what the majority of people, and particularly working class people, would have been eating would have been more like a steak pie for your main course.
For a long time, of course, the English Christmas dish par excellence was beef and plum pudding. And I quite love the idea of having beef at Christmas. So tell me more about the steak pie.
we believe that the prevalence of steak pie in Scotland really goes back to a dish called the Yule Mart. The Yule Mart is essentially a cut of beef which is salted and then aged, and it's kept for Yule, and if it was a big enough bit, it would be roasted over your fire. But what we also have, and the reason it's we still know about it, is because it was so ingrained into how communities operated at Christmas, because people believed that everyone, your neighbour, your community, your network of everyone that you know in your little village or your little town, your little hamlet, everyone should have beef and leave that day full. And so if you knew someone didn't have enough, you would cut off a bit of your Yule Mart. And what that meant is that the poorest people in your community would get the end of everyone's bit of beef. And then with the ends of lots of diced beef, you would make like a stew, or obviously, cook it off and try to make the most of it. And like Lindsay was saying, as people began to move to towns in the Victorian era in the 19th century, and people become reliant on bakers and butchers, they know how to cook this cheap, filling Christmas dinner, and would go to the butcher, and you could buy, they have in adverts in the early 1800s in newspapers, you could go and essentially buy a kit from your butcher that would be your diced beef, suet, seasonings, and you would take that to your baker and buy the pastry from the baker, and then the baker would charge you a fee to cook that off in the oven. And so the story of steak pie at Christmas, it really is tied to poverty in society, communities looking out for each other.
I'm bowled over with that. That idea of community, the wider community, rather than just the nuclear family, which is so much a part of the British Christmas today, that's something that I think we do lack. Today, are people still eating steak pies, or has it all become the holy or unholy triumvirate of turkey, plum pudding and mince pies as it has in England?
I grew up on the East Coast, very rurally, and for us, again, turkey was just never... And it's funny because my dad's actually from Norfolk, which is obviously the holy grail, the holy land of turkeys. But it always just seemed that it was a bit too outsourced. So we normally had goose or beef, like Aberdeen Angus also put my flag on the table. Excellent beef. But I think it is, the kind of commercialisation of Christmas has meant that kind of Dickensian turkey image did creep into Scotland just a little bit slower than it did in England. And turkey is very commonly what people default to, but I think, we need to return to the better days of beef.
Lindsay Middleton and Peter Gilchrist from the Scottish Food History podcast. Peter talked about the need for a midwinter food moment, something which we see in pre-Christian Britain in the form of various winter solstice celebrations, some of the rituals around which remained part of folk tradition well after the solstice was rolled into Christmas. It's also something we see repeated in different non-Christian cultures all over the world, as I deliciously discovered in a hotel restaurant in Bath.
Hi, I'm Dr. Simi Rezai Ghasemi. I was born in Tabriz in Iran, which is the Azerbaijan region of Iran, and I grew up in Anglesey in North Wales. I now live in Bath, and I run Simi's Kitchen, where I teach mainly West Asian cookery, and I'm also a food anthropologist.
So tell me about the solstice, the longest night of the year.
In the Iranian culture, and that's all the Persianate society, they know it as Yalda, which you may have heard before. As for the night itself, it's the time we're here in the Northern Hemisphere. On Sunday, the 21st of December, at 3:03 precisely, we will tilt towards the sun, and our days will start growing longer. And many cultures around the world celebrate getting through the hardship of winter.
So, Yalda, tell me what you do at home to celebrate the winter solstice.
In order to keep with the tradition that it's from, in the past what I've done is I have invited people to my home to come with a dish, and then a riddle, a dance, a piece of music, prose, poetry to share. So it's an evening of grazing and sharing.
And what kind of things do you eat? I can see there's a spread in front of me. Just talk me very quickly through the dishes. I can see these are crab apples. And they're poached?
Yes. So I call it a pickle. So it's a sweet and sour vinegar, sugar, and heavily scented and flavoured with the inside of a cardamom pod. So I've taken them out and they're there. And Annie's just biting into one.
Obviously, I've eaten the whole one.
Yeah, that's okay. And I eat whole apples and their seeds, but apparently the seeds are not good for you. So
these are extraordinary. The spices really come through nicely, and it's exactly the right levels of sugar. So they've still got that beautiful tartness of the crabapple. They've also still got the crisp of the crabapple. These are sort of like, to me, these are the palatable form of something like Turkish Delight, because they're very floral. I could sit and eat these all day.
That's what we do, all night. And then there's chishmish, which is a particular type of dried grape. I don't know the name in English, I'm still looking for it, but it's green, long, and it's like a jelly baby. It is just divine.
Those dried grapes are like sultanas on steroids.
There's something else.
Oh my goodness, wow. Finally, over there in the back, in this rather beautiful red tiffin tin, what's over there?
This one is carrot halva. Many cultures in the region make carrot halva, and it's supposed to be toothachingly sweet. Now, I've taken it down a few notches, but it's still sweet. This one is grated carrot cooked in milk, flavoured with saffron and cardamom again, and a few of those raisins that I spoke of before.
I do really love this idea of something that is balanced, actually, and healthy, and doesn't leave you feeling so full that you can't move at the end of your meal. So I think there's a lot for me here to learn. The idea of transferring, or rather sort of mingling, some form of solstice, snacky, picky tea with something that involves the flavours and traditions of Christmas. Yeah, I think I can work with this. I was struck by the range and snackability of what Dr. Simi brought that day in Bath. There were lots of bowls on her tray, all full of delightful things to try. And it made me wonder why we persist in sticking to a narrow range of dishes with such a startling degree of adoration. What is it that keeps us coming back? I'm in London, just off Gray's Inn Road, walking through the mews and the back streets to a restaurant called Kitchen Theory, where they've been working on a menu which purports to be the essence of Christmas dinner. It's informed by science and psychology, so let's go and see what's on the menu. In the kitchen, the staff are preparing for service, blitzing up a cream of chestnut with mushroom soup. It's one of 6 courses they offer as part of an immersive Christmas experience. It's not cheap either, at £220 a head. So what do you reckon to this as a Christmas meal?
My name's Jacob and I'm the head chef of Kitchen Theory. So we do our Christmas start. We're going to do a Christmas soup, the chestnut soup. We're going to do a crispy salmon with the celeriac and apple risotto. And the main course is going to be turkey, of course, this Christmas menu, with the traditional garnishes. And for the desserts, we do a Christmas pudding, which I cooked 6 months ago, and I left it to ferment in the storeroom.
The setting is a dark basement with a white light to evoke a cold, wintry day. My dining companions are the experimental psychologist Professor Charles Spence from Oxford University, who has helped devise the menu, and the founder of Kitchen Theory, Chef Joseph Youssef.
So one of our team is coming around to serve our more contemporary take on a mulled wine. In this case, it's chilled, so maybe heresy to some people, but actually you get so much of the kind of spices and the flavours that come through when it's chilled. Slightly same familiar spices and flavours, but delivered in obviously a different format. Now, to pair with this, because we want to prime your sense of smell and really heighten your appreciation of it, before you take your first sip, one of the team is coming around with some ginger-scented flavour bubbles.
So what you're doing is you're applying what looks like a glue gun crossed with a hairdryer to the top of this beautiful gold goblet. And what's emerged is this enormous set of bubbles. They're about the size of a golf ball. And as you take away your device, this incredible steam rises from it. So the whole table is now wreathed in a sort of smoke. As we sipped from our golden goblets, we discussed what they thought made Christmas dinner Christmas dinner.
You're saying what's a traditional Christmas? Yeah, but to who? So one of the dishes on the menu, we feature seafood. Anything, well, seafood's so un-British as to put on the Christmas table. Not in mainland Europe, not in Spain. Seafood features heavily around Christmas and New Year's because it's seen as being opulent and expensive and good quality produce and something that you want to share. So that was also an element, is how do you factor in what is Christmas and nostalgia to people in other parts of the world. And even if you go kind of across cultures, you find in Japan there's some really quirky things like KFC is really popular, Kentucky Fried Chicken is really popular at Christmas. For no real apparent reason other than it became a trend, and now KFC is heavily associated with Christmas in Japan.
This is perhaps surprising, but true. For some in Japan, it seems nothing says Christmas more than a party bucket of fried chicken. It's the legacy of a marketing campaign that went viral in the 1970s. Outlets of KFC in Japan, where Christmas isn't an official holiday and Christians make up only a tiny proportion of the population, may see sales rise tenfold on Christmas Eve.
So what's next? You've put people in the mood, you've made them slightly happy, you've given them some bubbles and a sense of real fun. What do you want to do next then?
So the turkey and sprouts do feature on the menu, but more towards the main course. And the reason that we have that on the menu is we realise that the absence of having that, what people may consider traditional part of the meal, would just possibly mean that they walk out not feeling they've ticked that box of having a Christmas dinner in some way.
It's worth saying here that the latest research suggests our love affair with the turkey is starting to wane. A study by the Agriculture and Horticulture Development Board suggests 60% of us sat down to turkey on Christmas Day in 2020. This year, they expect that figure to slip to just over half the population at 51%.
But before we get them to that more traditional part or more conventional part of the meal, one of the elements we wanted to explore was around flavours and flavour pairings and flavours that we associate specifically with the Christmas season. And so the dish that we have coming over now consists of several root vegetables, and these are, as you mentioned earlier, being served with an interesting pair of culinary tweezers. And the idea with these very beautiful dishes is to take the root vegetable balls that we have here and dip them as you like and kind of mix and match as you like the different flavors that we have here. So we have everything. The root vegetables themselves are celeriac and carrots and potato and beetroot, and then we have a selection of flavors to dip these in that include rosemary oil, gingerbread spices, apple chutney, orange chutney, some sage, some cranberry gel. So the idea is get your tweezers at the ready and have a little play. And again, this is about getting our guests to interact with the food in a way that they wouldn't normally, getting them to be mindful and think about what flavor combinations they want, and in some way maybe personalizing their experience of the dish.
Well, I'm immediately pinging them off my tweezers, so I think I'm channeling Julia Roberts in Pretty Woman at the moment.
Right. And with the red and the green of sort of Santa Claus.
Yeah, well, that's part of it as well as the colours. You want to keep it to what people would consider very festive colours. So you've got a nice kind of mix of oranges and warm kind of brown, orange, spiced notes and tones, and the green from the rosemary oil. It's important to note that on all of our menus, we always try and focus on not necessarily having to have a protein as the star of the show.
I think also it does away with this idea that we eat 5,600 calories on the average Christmas meal and have vast amounts of food waste. Something like this is fun, it's interesting, but you're not worrying that you're going to spoil yourself for some form of main event that's coming up.
Just as long as there's carrot balls, the rest of the carrot that is used somewhere else in the stock or...
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. The main focus really is on just making sure that, I guess, people get a sense of play and pleasure and fun from the experience overall.
What I'm taking out of this is that you need to start with a sense of fun, not necessarily a cracker, could be bubbles or smoke or something, and at some point you need to have something on fire. Alfred Cézanne does...
Maybe not the food in the oven.
Well, Alfred Cézanne, who was a French chef in 1904, who wrote a cookery book aimed at other French chefs who wanted to come and cook in England and also in America, he has a mincemeat omelette where you stuff the omelette with mincemeat and then you set the omelette on fire. And I have done that. I've done that for breakfast several years running. And as an alternative to the kind of flavours you get in Christmas pudding, an omelette on fire for breakfast, but with mincemeat in, That is both fun and also fire. So maybe that's something that I should continue to do on my own Christmas table.
Give the chef an idea there.
Christmas dinner is one of those things that's really slow to change. I mean, we only eat it once a year. Do you think that actually Christmas dinner is one of those really static things where if you were revisiting this 10 years in the future, you would actually get away with serving pretty much the same menu because Christmas dinner will just be the same for most people?
I suppose you can think that nostalgia could be triggered through any of your senses. With nostalgic images, nostalgic soundtracks, but probably the aroma does it better than anything else.
And I think you constantly see new elements being introduced. So, for example, now you'll start to see Christmas treats in the supermarket that feature salted caramel as a element. That would have never existed 10 years ago, so we don't know in another 10 years having salted caramel on your pudding may be a core part of Christmas.
Dubai chocolate, is that coming in as well?
Yeah, exactly. But there are definitely new flavours that slowly are working their way into it. And I guess, that idea of it maybe in 10, 20 years, they become more of a staple.
So evolution rather than revolution lies ahead, according to chef Joseph Youssef. But others take a different view. Dr. Morgan Gay has the rather amazing job title of being a food futurologist. She thinks our tastes may move somewhat faster. So, Morgan, we've looked at Christmases past and we've looked at Christmas present. But you're here to tell us about Christmas in the future. What does the future hold for a Christmas dinner?
Well, it's definitely moving into a non-traditional space. Really, it's going to be much less formal and much more snack-based. So a lot more plates, a little bit more like a Christmas tapas. So roast potatoes will stay and pigs in blankets will stay. There are some things that just are disappearing, and a lot of people do not like turkey and perhaps maybe don't even want that big centrepiece anymore because within that family there may be 5 different desires for a small centrepiece. So rather than it being turkey or a ham or a nut roast, it might be a little piece of this, a little piece of that and the other. So it's much more of a smorgasbord.
Okay, so talk us through Christmas in 10 years' time. We're in 2035, 2036, and it's the beginning of Christmas Day. What's happening?
Well, a lot of the things that we'll be eating in 10 years' time perhaps will be 3D printed. They will be using a load more plant proteins than we have now that are even available right now. We'll have air protein. It'll be...
What's air protein?
Oh, air protein. So air protein is one of the biggest protein developments at the moment that's invested. All of the investors in Silicon Valley are really rushing towards this as a protein opportunity because it's air with just microbes, air and a small little chemical mixed in with it, and within 2 hours you can order, let's say, 10 tons of this air protein, which can be formed and made into something that looks and tastes just like chicken, just like prawns, just like anything that you want. So air protein will definitely be on our tables in 10 years' time.
This just sounds to me so Edwardian. This is the Edwardian culture. The Edwardian Christmas dinner was one where you took, admittedly, real meat, you boiled it, you put it through a sieve, and then you mixed it with aspic to make it look like the original meat that it had been, having enhanced it with food dyes.
Absolutely. It's almost like the mould, isn't it? It's pushing it into a mould. This is the 3D version of that. This is a 3D printed version of the Edwardian Christmas
So this is
meat.
the ultra-processed version of the Edwardian meal?
Well, in some ways, not almost that processed, only because, like I said, there'll be much more technology involved in making these clean proteins very simple. So air, carbon dioxide and microbes, that is your chicken. So one of the other things that we can expect to see on the Christmas table are things that grow prolifically and easily and will be cheap. So seaweeds, and we'll see lots of technology around developing seaweeds into different types of food, and mushrooms. Lots of different mushroom capabilities that will come through that we currently aren't using, because if you don't like mushrooms, you're not going to eat mushrooms. But there's lots of other opportunities there that we'll see over time.
Now, I can see some of this happening in perhaps 20 or 30 years' time, but one of the things that always strikes me about Christmas dinner is that it moves so slowly. It evolves incredibly slowly because we only do it once a year. And because inevitably there are multiple generations involved, some of which are less inclined towards change than others.
I think what's happening right now is unprecedented. Because up until now, I agree with that. I think the changes are very slow. But the next 10 years, the rapidity of change, AI, everything that's going to be affecting us has never been at that speed before. So the things like climate change and technology is going so fast we can't even keep up with it right now. But 10 years will feel like 20, 30 years. And also we've got Gen Z coming through. And they are really different to every generation that's gone before. They'll make different choices.
Seaweed and air protein on the big day. I can't say I'm convinced. And in a rapidly accelerating world, I wonder if that need to cling on to tradition, the bedrock of the past, will only become more acute as we hurtle into an uncertain future. It got me thinking about what I'll be eating this Christmas. I've made a decision that I hope has elements of that Georgian feast, Simi's wonderful Yalda smorgasbord, and a bit of modernist chef showmanship. See what you think. Back in Bath, my old friend Chris Bailey was eager to find out.
So, go on. What are you having for Christmas dinner this year? Have you decided yet?
Well, I think I have. I wouldn't say it's set in stone. I'm going to start with venison and Christmas pudding en croûte. That's the starter. Then for the main, I really love the idea of a sort of a picky tea, a kind of everybody dig in and you just pick and choose what you want to, and moving away from a centrepiece. So I'm going to go with a baked vacherin with pickled pears. I've already made the pickled pears because I've got a pear tree in the garden. I think Fenland celery to reflect the region I live in and because it's a very, very beautiful thing. I'd like to do, I think, some dried fruits and nuts. And then for the sweet course, I do love Christmas pudding, but I don't think that it deserves a place on that meal because it'll be too big. So I'm going to go with setting something on fire because that to me is one of those non-negotiables. And I'm going to go with crêpe Suzette because it's orangey and it's boozy and it's Christmassy and there is fire and I love crêpe Suzette.
Can I have those recipes for Boxing Day, please?